Board of Education regular meeting. It is Wednesday, July 9th, 2025. Are we in compliance with open meeting laws?
Yes, we are.
Please call the roll.
DeWitt. Ford.
Here.
Herzog.
Here.
Hess.
Here.
Snutley.
Here.
Wright. Wyman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
And if you'd all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And tonight we have Dr. Coleman here in lieu of Dr. Davis, who's attending a National Superintendent's Conference in Washington, D.C. Dr. Coleman, would you like to do the land acknowledgement, please?
Absolutely. As we gather today, we would like to acknowledge that in Oshkosh, we are on the ancestral homelands of the Ho-Chunk Nation and the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin, who lived along the western shores of Lake Winnebago, Wisconsin's largest freshwater lake, entirely within its borders. We acknowledge that these indigenous sovereign communities who have stewarded the land throughout the generations and pay respect to their elders, past and present. We welcome the duty and opportunity to share stewardship of these lands.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Does anyone like to see any changes for the agenda this evening?
Do you want me to look to see if there's anyone speaking? It's for potential switching the order of...
Sure, that'd be great.
Nope.
Okay. And then we will keep the agenda as it is. Thank you. Board President's report. Recognition of retirement. We have one retiree this evening, and it's James Risa, maintenance craftsman number 2, worked in the entire district, and he's been with the district since 1996. Dr. Herzog, anything for Mr. Risa?
Thank you very much, Mrs. Wyman. I've had the pleasure of knowing Jim Resop primarily through serving as a liaison to the employee bargaining unit that he's been part of. And beyond that, we've had some very good conversations when I've been out and about in buildings or in the community and have run into him. I know him to be a very conscientious and devoted member of the district staff, and I just want to wish him all the best in retirement. May it be a long, healthy, and happy one moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Thank you. We wish you well. Mission moment. The mission moment that we have this week is recognizing some of our summer educational experiences, and one person that we'd like to recognize today is Mr. Sean Bach. And he is leading students at Menominee Elementary School on a paleontologist-like discovery where young learners explore fossils and rocks. Students take their learning outdoors on a nature walk, and they collect nature artifacts that they can make into mold fossils. They also learn about different types of rocks, sedimentary rock, and how they can preserve nature for thousands and thousands of years. This program is called Science Everywhere, and it's a highly engaging and interactive summer learning experience that allows students to discover the many ways they can interact with science every day. In addition to the joyful learning and fun that the students experience, Mr. S. finds joy in creating opportunities for students to challenge themselves, to learn outside of their comfort zones, take ownership of their learning as young scientists, and build positive friendships with their peers. So cheers to you, Mr. Schonbach. Thank you. Superintendent's report.
All right, I'll start with the legislative conference update. I'm filling in for Dr. Davis, and he's currently attending the AASA School Superintendents Association Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C., as he's on the AASA governing board. This opportunity and his attendance at this conference provides the space for him to engage face-to-face with staff from Senator Johnson's office, Senator Baldwin's office, and Representative Grothman's office to relay district needs. Spoke with him this afternoon, and he indicated that his conversations with those representatives and their teams were productive. We look forward to a more comprehensive update when he returns. Next, I will provide the good news report. 7th and 8th graders in our Math Matters summer course at Bell Phillips Middle School got creative using grids to design original quilt patterns. Students then used their designs to create fractions for each type of color tile, then converted those fractions into decimals and percentages to determine the price of their finished quilts. We love seeing our young minds hard at work over the summer. Next, we'll go over to our Crafty Kids at Traeger. Students in our Traeger Crafty Kids summer school class, they've been working hard creating and crafting. Creations have included bear sketches using watercolors, line design cats, and stitching projects. Up next are clay turtles, flower collages, and foil art. Our high school summer marching band proudly represented our district in the recent Oshkosh 4th of July parade. Approximately 21 talented students from both Oshkosh North and Oshkosh West High School have been practicing hard and delivered an impressive performance. Their participation showcased not only their musical dedication, but also the strong spirit of collaboration between our high schools. Bell Phillips Middle School's Cooking Around the World summer school students transformed into culinary artists. After researching various state flags, they put their knowledge and creativity to the test by designing their own state flags on graham crackers using homemade frosting. This engaging activity allowed these young chefs to not only hone their cooking skills, but also explore geography in a delicious and interactive way. Our young athletes at Menominee Elementary are having a blast in their Sports of All Sorts summer course. Recently, they engaged in a lively game of team dodgeball, showcasing their developing skills and enthusiasm. Beyond being introduced to a variety of sports, these students are learning valuable lessons in teamwork, embracing challenges, and the importance of staying active. This summer, our high school students have been learning how to react to medical emergencies and render first aid in our Summon Human Health Issues course. Although the exercises only simulate a health emergency, students are demonstrating a high level of alertness and model the importance of staying calm in stressful situations. We are so proud of our students for learning these life-saving skills. First and second graders who are learning the English language at Oaklawn Elementary recently made homemade ice cream. The students and the ingredients had huge reactions to the process. Students also learned about the dairy industry, the science behind ice cream, and new vocabulary words like unique ingredients and tasty flavors. Students are honing their literacy skills this summer through Lit Camp at Menominee Elementary. This is a fun summer camp themed literacy course offered to students in kindergarten through grade 5 as a part of our summer programming. Recently, second and third grade students read Tsuki Kimono and were challenged to write down things they noticed within the story and reflect on areas they wondered about. Not only did these campers practice writing complete sentences, they also gained experience citing examples from the text and modeled valuable discussion skills. Oshkosh North's Communities Program has been named the recipient of the American Red Cross Youth and Young Adult Hero Award. This award recognizes individuals who have made an impact in the lives of others through their bravery, dedication, and humanitarian service. Our communities team will officially receive this well-deserved award at the Red Cross's annual golf fundraiser in August. Congratulations to Oshkosh North's Communities Program. And another shout out from our American Red Cross. The organization recently recognized our district and our dedicated American Heart Association volunteer leaders for their incredible impact. The association recognized our staff volunteer coordinators listed on the screen who went above and beyond. Our staff members support the Kids Heart Challenge and American Heart Challenge taught life-saving skills like hands-only CPR and stroke warning signs. This helps make our community safer while raising funds for heart research. Thank you for leading with heart. And listed here are a few meetings and events that Superintendent Davis has been engaged in July.
Thank you very much. Next, we have District Administrator's supplemental reports. First one is the referendum update. Mr. Nehans.
Good evening. To go through the Phase 2 update, again, this is on the website. If you go on our website and you go to the Phase 2 updates, you can scroll down and see everything that's happening within all the projects. We will be going over what's been happening here in July. Lots of work has been going on in all of the different projects at Carl Traeger. We've been finalizing the classroom designs and trying to get to selections upcoming on furniture and the final details inside. We have been working with the city to look at the outside site part of the design and working on possible solutions for 20th Avenue and what that looks like, how we can do. We've got our next meeting with the city next week to keep that going. Hopefully we will be getting a final design approved by them so we can be out to bid for this project September or October of this year. So coming up pretty quickly. Again, finishing the design there. And then the teams have also been working at Franklin and Oakwood. Those being much larger projects, it's taking us a little bit more time that we have. So we are still going through floor plans, interior designs, and what all of those are gonna, the square footage needed and where we're looking at for those projects together. Next steps, we're gonna continue to work at Traeger and immediately on the site plans and making sure that we have our stormwater and everything there. Also looking at having the traffic analysis study for Franklin and Oakwood, that's coming up. And again, working with the city on making sure stormwater and all of our outside site work is all accounted for. And then doing the completion of our construction projects for Carl Traeger so we can go out to bid. I do have another update. For some reason, my computer timed out on me.
Can I ask you a question while you're finding your?
Yes.
There was a traffic study done at Carl Traeger. Can you just re-inform the community the results of that study?
Yeah, so that's what we're working with the city on right now. We did have a traffic analysis study done on 20th to see, we know we get a lot of parent traffic and a lot of backup of traffic in that area before and after school. So we had analysis done and recommendations from a company called Toddy, Traffic Analysis Design Company. And they are put forth some recommendations right now on how we can better use the site we currently have, our driveway and the parking lot, and then potentially work with the city for some alterations on 20th Avenue itself to get better traffic flow. And that's something we will continue, as I said, continue to work with the city on. At this point, it's probably too premature to actually give a little bit more specifics. We're still working through with the city on what that solution for that street could look like. But you'll get more information next month on that.
Thank you.
Yep. So the other referendum update we actually have is from Phase 1 with the completion of the track and the rest of the green site over at Val Phillips. If you've been by there, you'll see a lot of construction happening. Dirt's been moving. We are finalizing the grading for the track and the football soccer field that will be there. The final grading is happening now. We had a slight delay, partly a few things that were going on there, but we should be good for most of the project finishing before school. The final completion of the track and the seeding of the grass will probably come more early September. Right now, you will be noticing that the basketball courts have been excavated, and that work will start to be done, as well as there's stormwater being installed in the property as well. And then the garage should have started constructing this week, so they were scheduled to start Monday. I have not had an opportunity to go by there, but the garage was supposed to be happening too. So if you are in that area and you go by, you should be seeing quite a bit of activity on that site.
Great.
Any questions on those parts?
I'm going to go back to the original stuff. Just as you were talking, it reminded me, I think a while back, we were submitting for a grant to potentially collaborate with the municipalities on emergency shelter, and that was going to impact some of the sites, I think. Do you have any update on that?
Correct. We actually pulled out of those and didn't submit them. We got advice from the state, actually, who we had to submit them to initially as a pre-submittal. They were being told that the federal government discontinued all of those. So there was not going to be funding, so we abandoned all three of those projects.
Dr. Herzog?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, who are the members of the OASD core planning team? Not necessarily by name, but by title or duties in the district.
Yeah, so Julie Conrad, Jim Fox, so our Assistant Superintendent of Operations, our Facilities Director, myself, and then any of the principals that are involved at whatever location, the principal would be involved in that as well. And then we also have representatives from Bray, and then our internally, Julie Conrad, Jim Fox, and myself, we have regular meetings with Dr. Coleman and Dr. Davis to keep them updated on what we're doing as well. There's close to 5 hours of meetings a week on these projects, so we try to make sure that everyone's time is spent where it's most needed.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you, and we can
Yes.
move right into your next report. Budget variance report.
So budget variance report, we are into July. This report is through June. So again, as we talked about last month, it's going to be closer to the report next month, where we have better idea of more definite detail on what we're going to end the fiscal year on. We are still trying to work through closing out the current year as of June 30th, trying to get all of our payrolls reconciled out of the system. We don't even get our health plan and dental plan. It's called IBNR, all of our waiting claims that are in process. We don't get that until middle of next week. So it usually takes about a week and a half, 2 weeks to reconcile those out. So by next month, we'll have a much better idea of where we're gonna land for the end of the school year, or for the fiscal year. So these numbers, you'll notice, are still gonna change. So we still are projecting about a $2.5 million deficit in our operating funds, Fund 10 and Fund 27. Food service will end up with a deficit. That one, we should have numbers a little bit sooner, just because we're mostly waiting on revenue numbers from the state on that one, which should come in about another week or two. In Fund 80 will again show a surplus, but we know the surplus is earmarked for projects for a playground already. So that'll just be a carry from one year to the other. Are there any questions on the budget report?
Okay, let's move right into worker compensation quarterly claims.
Okay, the final quarter of 24-25 as far as workers' comp goes, it resets July 1 or reset July 1. So we did get a final mod rate for 2025. It lowered 0.02%. We're down to 1.27. It's not where we want to be, but it did come down slightly. You can see in the report the third quarter financially for us was the worst quarter of the year to date. Again, most of those are being held in reserves right now, and the bulk of the quarter is 2 incidents that would be more classified slip, trip, and fall, which again would be considered from the workers' comp world, that's considered avoidable of an accident. So we really, what drives our mod rate and our large financial impact within workers' comp has not been student-related accidents. It's more been the slips, trips, and falls. Our adults doing activities, participating with activities with kids and getting hurt, more along those lines, which have been the more costly incidents that we have.
Something I'm wondering about, when we have what are considered avoidable situations, is there an education component to try to avoid repetition of those kinds of injuries in the future?
Yes, we do with every accident, we do an investigation, and then there is follow-up. Again, some of it, we try to get word out on what you're doing. Some of these accidents just, they're going to happen. They're not looking where they're going, or they're looking at something else and they trip and they break a hip. Some things happen. Unfortunately, it's also just the way workers' comp works. It's so the board understands this year's activity isn't on our current mod. It takes another year for it to go on, so you're always working 3 years a year behind you, and you're working in that 3-year period. So 2 of our years of experience right now in our mod are our 2 worst years in the last several. So those are going to stick with us. That's why in the report last quarter, Mrs. Conrad had said that this is going to take us a while to get the mod rate down. Our 3-year rolling average right now, the 2 that are staying on are our 2 highest out of our last 5 or 6 years. So the mod rate's going to be very difficult to be able to get some downward trend. So again, we've got a new broker that's working with us, a new workers' comp claims company that only deals with school districts, and they've been in and worked with Mrs. Conrad and myself and Mrs. Fitzpatrick to help us with a short 90-day plan and trying to get us into the buildings more regularly with safety walkthroughs and more interaction within the building staff on how we can try to make sure we are keeping the environments as safe as possible.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Miltnik?
I appreciate you very much clarifying the fact that the majority of our claims are avoidable non-contact injuries, are not necessarily through direct interactions with students or harm done by students. I am just curious if you could also clarify, I just don't understand how this part works. There's a point about how you talk about this quarter you have $73,000 paid and about $300,000 in reserves. Does the reserves mean that when an incident happens, there's an estimate given of how much it's going to cost us? And okay, so that's what that is?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so the way it works and what's happening now is on the 2 claims we currently have active, the reserves get split into 2 different parts. There's a medical part for the anticipated medical bills that they're going to have, and those are fairly accurate within the reserves. The companies that do this have been doing it for long enough to know if you've got a broken hip or you've got a torn meniscus, we know what that's going to cost you for medical. The part that gets trickier and the part that we're watching and that I'll be working with Argent on, who is our new company, is the indemnity. So it's the pay that we have to do. So when they lose work, we owe them their money. So we have a very aggressive return to work to get them back to work. But that is a very unknown. So a lot of times that number is grossly exaggerated. and everybody knows it. It's just working through that injury far enough to get them comfortable that they can bring that number down. I would anticipate that number is overinflated by at least $100,000 right now from what I've seen on that report, which will help us. I mean, if we take $100,000 off of that, we went from $518,000 total down closer to 380, which is back getting close to where we need to be. We ideally would be lower than that, but that's going to make a significant difference for us. So,
Thank you for those clarifications.
yep.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Nihant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Schmidt, cybersecurity updates.
All right, good evening, everybody. So as you saw in the report, we're entering our 6th year of active cybersecurity processes, which means that we're a very mature system when it comes to our cybersecurity practices and protocols and all of the tools that we have in place. As you'll see in there, our phishing rate continues to get higher, but again, as explained, like we're with our rates the way that they are, we're at a 3-star rating within our KPIs, but also that's based off of numbers that aren't 100% accurate because of the way that the reporting tools work. So there's a conflict between our reporting system and the system that Google uses. They're both effective, and we get positive results from both systems. So we don't want to discourage people from using the Google tools just so we can bump our numbers. We really want the effectiveness of the tools is really what we're going for. So we'll continue to educate our users on what those processes look like, how to report things, those kinds of things. And we also have a plan to address our education component, which will move us back into that higher rating that we had at the beginning of the school year. Another thing that we're in the process of working our way through is adopting some protocols for data loss prevention. So in the cybersecurity world, we talk about data loss prevention as in those documents that get shared that shouldn't be, or that are accidentally exposed to the world that we don't want them to be. So we have access to some AI tools that will help us to identify some of those documents that should not be shared publicly, and then we have system settings that stop them from being shared, or before they can be shared, things have to be redacted. So things like social security numbers or like other private information that we want to make sure stays private. We'll have some of those tools. So we're in the research phase of that, and we'll start doing some training of the model, some identification and those kinds of things over the course of the next couple of months or so. And our goal is to have that in place by the beginning of January. Another thing that we have been working on is along the lines of not just the cybersecurity as in from user perspective, but also from the perspective of making sure that our vendors are being responsible with the data that they're collecting. We've had the practice for a long time, at least for the last 4 or 5 years, of having vendors sign data privacy agreements with us. So when we give them student data, they are signing a contract with us that says we will do this much and only this. And even if their terms of service change, our privacy agreement still stands. That process has historically been very manual, and we've had a little bit of trouble tracking when those agreements are expiring and reaching out to get them renewed. So one of the pieces that we have been working on as part of the 5-year tech plan is also going to have some overlap in our cybersecurity plan. So we've moved to a Learn platform to track and audit our usage of all of our tools and things like that. Another component of that system is to maintain and monitor these data privacy agreements. So when those things expire, it's an automatic renewal process. It reaches out to the person that's responsible on their end. They sign it, and if they don't sign it, it expires. I get notified, and we remove their access. So it will help us to maintain those those agreements in a much more efficient and effective way. So, any questions for you on the content of that report?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have Mr. Miller, 2025 Community Engagement Plan Draft.
Good evening to the board and our viewers. I just want to take a few minutes to walk through the written report that was given to you all as it pertains to the 2025 Community Engagement Plan. The overall purpose of the presentation is to provide the board and our community with an overview of a plan that reflects our district's commitment to the belief that every student's success is rooted in a strong and supportive community. So we know that as a district, our schools play a vital role in producing young people that will become productive citizens and contributors to our overall community. But we also know that we can't do this alone. We believe that it takes a community to raise the next generation of leaders. So we want to be intentional in fostering partnerships with families, local businesses, educational institutions, and organizations to ensure that all of our students have access to people and resources that they need to thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. Ultimately, these partnerships will aid in our students' ability to be college, career, and community ready. There is an African proverb that goes, "It takes a village to raise a child," and we want to ensure that all of our students have an opportunity to be a part of a village of community members that care deeply about their future success. And drawing from my personal experience as a Boys and Girls Club kid and a TRIO program student, I do understand the potential impact of wraparound support and stack support for our students. The plan's overall mission is to unite the Oshkosh community, to create learning experiences, leadership opportunities, and more opportunities for engagement so that our schools are positioned as the center of a thriving and connected community. The plan is built on 3 foundational pillars, which include Adopt a School, volunteerism, and community and family workshops. Each pillar's purpose is meant to strengthen the relationships and expand opportunities for students, families, and community partners. So it's important to note that during the ideation phase and the development of this plan, I had an opportunity to gather input from a diverse range of stakeholders. So formal presentations were delivered at a superintendent advisory committee meeting, a citywide parent-teacher organization meeting, our June All-Administrator Academy, and I also had the pleasure to present to the dedicated community members who participated in the first Oshkosh Schools Academy. It's equally important to mention that based off the feedback that I received through those formal channels and also other informal channels, that there was confusion in regards to a pillar that we had that was included in the original draft. So originally we had 4 pillars, and the 4th pillar was post-secondary exposure opportunities, but there was concerns about potential overlap with our career and tech ed department. So to be responsive to that feedback that I received, we decided to move from the 4 pillar model that we originally had posed to the current 3-pillar structure that we currently have. So just to touch on the major points in the report, I want to ensure that I am able to give a quick overview of each pillar and the metrics that will be used to determine each pillar's success. So the first pillar is the Adopt a School program. It's dedicated to formalizing and expanding partnerships between local businesses and our schools. These partnerships may create meaningful opportunities for businesses and leaders and organizations to connect with students by sharing their time, talent, resources, and their networks. An example of what a business sponsorship may look like: a business may look to Adopt a School to sponsor a staff appreciation event during Teacher Appreciation Week, so they can provide lunch. A business may decide to provide Kona Ice for the children over at Reed Elementary and the staff on the last day of school, or they may help combat food insecurity by funding a snack program. We will measure the success of this particular pillar by tracking the number of active business partnerships, student participation in partnership activities, and feedback from annual surveys completed by our business partners. So building on these connections, our second pillar emphasizes volunteerism. We are looking to invite the public back into our public schools. We want our community members to have opportunities to contribute their time and their expertise to enrich school events and support student learning experiences. Volunteer opportunities may include becoming an office assistant, being a mentor, becoming a guest speaker in the classroom, helping to plan events, becoming a club advisor, and there are other opportunities for volunteerism listed on the district's website if you are interested in exploring any more. The impact of this pillar will be measured by the number of active volunteers, total volunteer hours, and insights from volunteer surveys. And then lastly, our third pillar centers on community forums and workshops to further strengthen our school community. By engaging families through targeted learning opportunities, we will support both student achievement and overall community well-being. Sample workshop titles suggested by community members include Emerging Reader Day at the Oshkosh Public Library, Understanding SEL, so understanding what social emotional learning is and what that means for our schools. And one that I would be interested in attending is How to Monitor My Child's Screen Time. We will measure success in this area by recording event attendance and using post-event surveys to assess participant satisfaction and learning outcomes. Together, these three pillars form our comprehensive approach to community engagement. So at this time, I would just like to open up the floor to any feedback that you all have to this draft.
I just have one question or comment. Well, I hope that I'm a little worried that this underemphasizes our biggest stakeholder group of our students and our families. And I get that that's only one of the three pillars, but you're trying to ingrain it throughout the centering of students. Particularly though for pillar 3, I hope that we can also have workshops and forums to make it clear that the relationship and the learning goes both ways, where it's not just us telling parents how to monitor screen time, but also there's a very open forum where parents and kids can give us feedback and build that trust and that relationship. And I hope the trust is what I really hope that we can see throughout these three pillars,
Yes.
And then also the formal emphasis on students and families, student-centered, obviously.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a suggestion. I mean, I like the inclusion of measurable outcomes, and I guess once you kind of have the first year of data, it'd be nice to come back with some goals where we'd like to see it, where we'd like to see it go after
Yes.
we establish that baseline.
Okay.
Dr. Herzog, anything?
One of the things I've been wondering about, and I think I had expressed this perhaps to you or to Dr. Coleman, is how can we engage families, maybe and maybe this is happening, so excuse me if I'm not in the loop on whether or not this happens, but if there's been an issue with a student in a particular building, to what extent are we reaching out to that family and asking for their input in terms of what suggestions they have to help us be more successful with their student? I mean, I like the idea of forums and workshops. We've also heard from was Mrs. Kiffmeyer some time ago about student engagement, and there were some subgroups of students that aren't as engaged as others.
Yes.
To me, that seems like a golden opportunity to reach out to those students who are not participating, as well as the families, to find out what's going on, that we could get them more engaged. Many years ago, when we saw an influx of students from Southeast Asia, we noted that many of them, for quite a while, we didn't track data like we do today. I'm glad we do it the way we do now. But we found that many of the girls were not participating in like after-school activities, extracurriculars, and so on. The reason being, at that time, they were needed to go home and help with the younger children or to help prepare meals. It wasn't necessarily because we didn't have activities that appealed to them, but they had responsibilities in the home. So I'm wondering if there could be a component of this, or maybe it's already built in, where we're getting feedback directly from the students who seem to be underserved or not participating as much, and their parents as to what would appeal to them more? Or how can we better, maybe a better way of saying that is, how can we better serve their needs?
Yes.
By asking the people directly rather than trying to figure that out by ourselves without that kind of input.
Yes, some feedback that I have gotten from some community members aligns with your comment in regards to us assuming what our families want and need, and also inviting our families into spaces where they may not feel comfortable. So the suggestion I got from the community member was for us to find ways to go to where our students and families are, to host some of these workshops, and to also have it resemble the forums that Dr. Davis ran during the referendum workshops. So,
Thank you.
no, thank you.
Dr. Hess?
Could you say one more time the fourth pillar that we're no longer including? What was that again? And what was the logic?
So post-secondary exposure opportunities. And
Okay.
the logic was that there was confusion and potential overlap with our career and technical education department.
Suggesting that we already do that.
Yes.
And that it doesn't necessarily need to be, because I guess I questioned, because when I read this, I was like, oh, where is the post-secondary stuff? And then you mentioned it, and I was like, well, okay, somebody kind of agreed with me. And is the overlap, you're saying, because we already do it, or because we're not also including, like, could internships fall in, where it's not just post-secondary education, but secondary education and other direct to the workforce sort of opportunities to get more of the community engaged? I don't know, I guess I'm just struggling because I thought that would be something, because we're in a community that has a lot of post-secondary education opportunities.
Yes.
And I would think ways to bring them in to get more exposure, but maybe we're already doing it and we don't need it in that plan. So I'm just kind of rambling. These are my thoughts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And your thought-
Thank you. I
no.
appreciate the measurables, and I agree with Dr. Ford that once we get some baseline measures, then success is how do we increase on these things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit, please?
Yes, so the sentiment was certainly we will continue to prioritize post-secondary opportunities and exposure to those opportunities. Director Miller also coordinates efforts that are happening at the school level with post-secondary navigators. And so it's not to suggest that that work isn't going to happen, but what we do have is a way to measure post-secondary opportunities that fall specifically under our career and technical education priorities in our domain. And so what we wanted to do was to maintain a distinction between how we measure and track that work that our career and technical education team is responsible for and the work that Director Miller is specifically responsible for. So that distinction certainly does not suggest that he won't engage in efforts to provide particularly targeted opportunities to provide post-secondary exposure. But what we, again, want to make sure that we're creating that distinction is that work is happening already in our system, and we have a mechanism to create goals around that work. And so the overlap or confusion that Director Miller spoke about is we're already measuring that, and there are already teams responsible for delivering on that. So how do we then make a determination on if that work that is happening is a result of Director Miller's work or a result of that team's work? So for that reason, we will continue to do that work, and Director Miller will continue to support it, but it won't be a part of this plan because we have it in other areas of our overall plans as a system.
Makes sense. Thank you.
I was someone who had raised a question about overlap of responsibilities, because I saw the potential for overlap with Pillar 4 in an earlier draft, and what the CTE program, Career and Technical Education Program, has done, especially over the last 3 years, looking to encourage and advocate for more partnerships within the business community. And then the work of Mrs. Duran with the Oshkosh Education Foundation. So I can see where business people would be confused if you've got somebody asking them to sponsor an event or something at a school, somebody else is coming to them saying, will you donate product for our CTE program? And then you also have a pillar here that is reaching out to them for something else. And if there's not good communication among those, sometimes we can turn off people in the business community because we're coming at them from different directions, but nobody seems to know what the other parties are doing. So communication will be clear or key, rather, with what would have been Pillar 4 for you, but making sure that those other groups are continuing to build relationships and engage the community, but doing it in a way where they talk with one another internally before they go external.
Thank you for Pillar 1. It's been a long time in coming with the Adopt a School program.
Yes.
And I'm thrilled that you're working with the Chamber to ensure that when we, I believe you're coming back in a month to really firm these up and the board approve them.
Yes.
And at that time, I hope that every school has a sponsor that starts the new year fresh and ready to go.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you
you.
very
Thank you.
much. We didn't have anyone signed up for, okay.
I took notes.
Okay, there is no agenda-related public forum or non-agenda-related public forum. We have a workshop this evening, and it's social, academic, and emotional behavior screener, SABRS. Mr. Kemmerer.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about SABRS, which is the measurement tool that we use to give us an indication of our social emotional learning programming and strategies within our district. I know many of you have heard this information before, but it's new for anybody. SABRS accounts for 30% of our Safe and Healthy Schools core area. And what SABRS is, it's essentially a rating scale. There's two different versions of it. One version, it's a student version, and this is done in grades 2 through 12, where our students actually answer 19 to 20 questions on their perceptions around their own social emotional learning skills. And then there's another component, which is just the SABRS piece, which is a teacher rating scale where they're essentially rating students based on their observations on the same characteristics that students rate themselves on. So it kind of gives us information from two different angles. The power of SABRS, though, really comes into play when we talk about our school data. So our school's ability to take this information and identify students who may have additional needs in any of the particular domains, and then use other data points, whether they be academic, behavioral, to really triangulate and figure out how to best support our students within our buildings. So we conduct SABRS 3 times a year. It's done once in fall, once in winter, and once in spring during benchmark periods. And the results from those rating scales give us an indication of which students have low risk, some risk, or high risk as it relates to social and emotional learning. And it also breaks it down into 3 separate areas. So it looks at social behavior, academic behavior, and emotional behavior. So that's one of the nice things too. We get scores in each of those areas for every student, so we can really focus in on where our students have needs, each of our students. So why is this important? We've dedicated a lot of time and resources to social emotional learning in the district over the past several years. From a universal standpoint, we've done things at the elementary level, like continuing to incorporate PBIS, which is more or less our framework around behavior and social emotional learning. We've implemented the Harmony curriculum at the elementary level, which is explicit social emotional learning instruction that's delivered by teachers, as well as Conscious Discipline, which is an overall kind of operating system from our schools, where it gives us language expectations, structures, support, so everybody's kind of pulling in the same direction. when it comes to how we're doing school, essentially. At the secondary level, we also use PBIS. Restorative practices is another big piece of that. So when we think about restorative practices, again, there's a lot of work done on the front end and building relationships and supports and structures, having those in place, but then also when students do make mistakes, being able to work with them to go back and repair the harm and really make sure that there are meaningful consequences that are going to help change behavior for students in those instances. And another component that we're going to be implementing this year is called a Wayfinder. I'll touch more on Wayfinder here shortly, but one of the components it is going to offer us is a universal curriculum that will be provided at the secondary level that we're going to be piloting this year. So it's the Harmony version that we're going to be doing at the secondary level. So in addition to that, some of the other things that we do to support students, when we have students who are at some risk or high risk, and we know there's a need, a lot of times we'll do what's called Tier 2 interventions or intensive interventions, which tend to be more one-on-one. Those are molded and geared specifically toward individualized student needs. One other thing that we use our SABRS data for is really to break it down and look at specific groups, and I'll get into that here shortly, but some of the ways we do that are looking at race, gender, grade level, to just see if we have trends that have developed over the course of time that we need to address. So for this year, we ended the year again at a 3-star rating, which we've been at for the last couple of years. When you look at our measurements for this particular rating, our high risk indicators show that our students are, if we just went off high risk, would be at a 5-star rating. We've been hovering right around 3% for my SABRS. Really, one of the challenges that we've experienced is moving students from our some risk category into our low risk category. So in schools, you oftentimes hear that referred to as Tier 2 level interventions or supports. And I'll get into that here. Again, I keep saying that, but one of the things we'll be looking at is Wayfinder and how that can contribute to more streamlined Tier 2 interventions to hopefully help move some of those students from that some risk to low risk level. So looking at throughout the course of this year, when we look at our fall, winter, and spring benchmarks, for my SABRS, again, the student version on the bottom, we don't see a whole lot of change from beginning to end. There's a little fluctuation with our winter benchmark, but based on our breakdown, we essentially started the year at right where we ended the year right where we started off. There's a little bit more fluctuation with the SABRS or the teacher ratings, and ultimately we ended the year with 75% of our students in the low risk category, 19 in some risk, and 6% in high risk. One of the trends we've noticed over the years is that our teacher ratings tend to be a bit different than our student ratings from the standpoint we typically have more students in the high risk category and fewer in the low risk category on our teacher ratings in comparison. Looking at it more long term over the years, SABRS in particular, again, we don't see a whole lot of fluctuation. There's a few percentage points here and there, but we've remained relatively consistent. And that's the same with my SABRS. Again, lately we've been holding it at 3%. We had a 2% in winter, but ultimately what we want to make sure when you look at the cross-section or the breakdown is that we have 3% or less of our students in that high-risk category. We'd really like to get above the 80% threshold for low risk. And again, those are some of the things that we're going to be doing to target that support going into this school year. Looking at gender in terms of the student ratings or my SABRS, not much variation when you look at the difference between male and female. However, when you look at the SABRS or the teacher ratings, there is quite a bit of difference between how they're observing males related to social and emotional learning skills versus females, where our males have twice as many students in the high risk category and far fewer in the low risk. Excuse me for a second. Getting over a little bit of a cold here. When we break it down by race, this is the SABRS rating scale, so these are, again, teacher ratings. This is another trend that we've seen over the years where our students of color, particularly our students who identify as Black, 2 or more races, or Hispanic, tend to have higher percentages of students in the high-risk category and fewer in the low-risk category. There's a similar but not as significant trend when it comes to the student ratings for my SABRS. The high-risk categories tend to be a little bit more in line, same with the low-risk categories, but there is still a bit of a difference there. And I took this a step further this year and I broke it down by both race and gender to see if there's anything that stands out. And when you look at this, I think one of the things that stands out most is that our students who identify as Black males on the teacher rating scales are significantly disproportionate compared to some of our other student populations. Looking specifically at high risk, along with our students who are Black males, our students who are male and also 2 or more races, and Hispanic also have a disproportionate number in the high risk category. Excuse me. One of the other trends that you'll notice consistently is that, thank you.
I may have some cough drops too. I almost always do.
The breakdown between male and female across all race levels, our male students tend to rate themselves as having higher social emotional learning skills than what our teachers are rating them at. The trend is actually in reverse for our females, where they're rating themselves lower in comparison to the teacher ratings. So their self-perceptions are very different compared to what our teachers are observing in the classroom. So one of the things that we typically do is we cross-reference our SABRS data with some of our other data points. And one of the more common data points that we use is our out-of-school suspension data. And this chart just shows that over the past few years, our out-of-school suspensions have been trending downward. With the exception of 19 and 20 and 2021, those are the 2 years that were impacted by COVID pandemic. We are seeing that downward trend continue. However, the concerning part of that is that downward trend tends to be made up predominantly of our students who are white. So when you look at it by race, for this year in particular, our students who are Black, 2 or more races, and Hispanic actually saw a slight increase in the number of out-of-school suspensions compared to last year. And that's concerning from the standpoint of obviously we've identified disproportionality as a concern in the past, and it's something that we've been working on addressing, and yet we've seen an increase in our disproportionality this year. And that can be seen as well when we calculate out our risk ratios. So risk ratio is a way to get a better feel for what the gravity of our disproportionality is in comparison to previous years, but then also looking at various racial groups within our district. So essentially a risk ratio measures the likelihood of a particular group receiving an outcome when compared to another group. So in this case, we use students who identify as white as our control group just because they make up the majority of our population. So when you look at the risk ratio, a risk ratio of 1 would be neutral, and the further you go up from 1, more significant the level of disproportionality is. So in this particular case, for this year, our students who are Black, the risk ratio of 4.4, that means that a student who's Black in our district is 4.4 times more likely to receive an out-of-school suspension compared to a student who is white. So along with that, you can see the risk ratios for students who are 2 or more races, and also for students who are Hispanic, are well above that 1.0. That would be neutral. The only group that is below that is our students who identify as Asian. I also looked at race and gender comparatively with out-of-school suspensions. And one of the other interesting and concerning things that came up was with our female students who identify as Black, having a risk ratio of 6.6. So the comparison group in this instant was females who are white. So when looking at our female population, overall, our female students who identify as Black are 6.6 times as likely to be out of school suspended when compared to their white female peers.
Can I interrupt you for just a second?
Sure.
I have a question that I've asked before, and it may change just a little bit, may not. And that has to do with, when we're talking about out-of-school suspensions, are these times or are these individuals?
So when we calculate risk ratio, every student who's suspended counts as one.
Okay.
So a student could be suspended 30 times throughout a year, but they're still counted as one.
Okay.
So it looks at individualized the risk of being suspended if you belong to a particular group.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Sure.
What,
Oh,
can I follow up on that?
sure, go ahead.
Is it counted as one? Because you've got the number of suspensions over the number of students. I understand in the denominator there, it is an individual student counts as one.
Mhm.
But if an individual student has multiple suspensions, then in that risk ratio calculation, those multiple suspensions are up in the numerator then, right?
No, so they don't factor in calculating a risk ratio in particular. We still look at overall total number of suspensions, and we can make comparisons that way, but for the sake of calculating risk ratios, every student who receives a suspension counts as one regardless of the number of suspensions that they've had.
Is that true when you look at the out-of-school suspensions by race? Is that, I'm sorry, I don't know what page this is.
This chart here?
Yes.
So this is total suspensions. So this includes all out-of-school suspensions. So this, if a student has, 3 or 4, three or four of those would be counted in these totals here.
So it gets back to my question, how many children are these?
So how many students account for our risk ratios?
How many students are being suspended? We have, what'd you say, well, I'm looking at the number right here. I'm seeing all of the out-of-school suspensions, and I'm assuming that this is the total number of suspensions. How many children make up those suspensions?
Yeah, I would have to go back and look to see what we use to calculate the risk ratios.
So it's an accurate summary to say a Black female student is 6.6 more times likely to be suspended than a white female student?
Yes. So looking back at the year, some of the highlights to touch on, we implemented a new 90-day structure for our SEL teams in terms of creating plans for each of our schools. We combined that with having representation for every school in our district SEL leadership team and having more standardization around what our schools are actually taking away from those meetings and implementing within their buildings. So that structure has worked out pretty well. And one of the advantages of using that structure is it allows us to have an opportunity to hear the great things that our schools are doing related to SEL. I'm going to touch on some of those things here shortly, and we have somebody here from one of our schools to talk a little bit more about some of the great things they've been doing at Oaklawn. But like I said, that structure has really allowed us to borrow more from one another. We've been able to expand our therapy dog fleet. So we started with Sparty, who is our therapy dog at Carl Traeger Elementary School, and we've been able to increase that by 4 additional dogs. So you see here we have Eddie, who is usually hanging out at district office here, as well as Grace, who is at Oshkosh West, Oliver at Menominee Elementary, and Rev, who hops between Perry Tippler in our early learning program. So these dogs have been a huge benefit for our students and our staff as well. Just helping to improve the overall culture and climate of our buildings, but then also when our students are struggling, having difficulty regulating, a lot of times all it takes is one of our dogs to come in, and it really makes a big difference. Along with that, we've continued the work with our BJA Stop School Violence grant. And again, this was a grant that we received that provides us with nearly $1 million over 3 years to do a number of things that align with school safety, and one of those has been to use that funding to continue our efforts with conscious discipline at the elementary level. So we've been able to continue to send staff to that, which really helps create more consistency within our buildings. Some opportunities for improvement going into this year. Racial disparities remain the most significant concern that I have. Along with that, we are making sure we have the time set aside within our days to explicitly teach social emotional learning, both at the elementary level and the secondary level. I think one of the common concerns from our teachers at both levels was that they just don't have time to fit it in with everything else in their day. So going into this year, that was one of the goals that we had, is to really carve out time to make that happen for our teachers. And also using Wayfinder, not only as a pilot curriculum for our SEL at the secondary level, but one of the cool things about Wayfinder is it provides Tier 2 interventions and other supports for students. So when I talked about really wanting to make sure we're focusing in on students who are at the Tier 2 level, trying to get them into the Tier 1 or the low risk category, really some of the tools that we're going to be able to use out of Wayfinder will hopefully get us there, because that really involves research-based interventions and structures within that platform that will make it easier for our staff as well. So they're not having to go out and search for these things and recreating the wheel. It's all right there for them. Additional actions that we're taking going into next year. So one of the things we created for this year was our Oshkosh Way manual for staff. That's something that we're currently working on, going through and updating for next school year. We're creating plans to onboard our secondary staff in Wayfinder. That'll be during one of the first weeks in August when our staff are returning. We also have a new data analysis system called NextPath that we're going to be onboarding. In the past, we've used EduClimber, and we found a lot of gaps within EduClimber that were making it difficult for us to be confident in the data that we were pulling. So NextPath will be a huge improvement in that area. We're going to continue on with our training and coaching in conscious discipline and restorative practices at both the elementary and secondary level. We also want to have a renewed focus on culture and climate in all of our buildings, making sure all of our buildings are somewhere where our students feel safe and welcome coming in, but also making sure we have common values, beliefs, traditions that influence how our students behave and interpret their school environment and community. We're also folding social emotional learning into our life and career skills at the middle level, and reviewing and updating our classroom code of conduct, which is long overdue for an update. And then one of the other pieces that we've been talking about to help with our teacher workload piece is eliminating the winter benchmark for our SABRs specifically. It wouldn't be my SABRs, it would just be the SABRs. That's the teacher rating. And the reason for that is it's only done at the elementary level, but our teachers are responsible for rating all of their students 3 times a year. And the rating scale itself only takes a couple of minutes, but when you're talking about 20 to 25 students, that adds up. And at a time when you're working on report cards at the end of the first semester, going into the second semester, it was just something else that our teachers had to spend a lot of time doing. So the thought is having a fall benchmark that we maybe push back a little bit, and a spring benchmark that we move up a little bit, will still give us 2 solid data points. And like I said, remove a little bit of burden from our teachers in that regard. So in terms of some of our individual school highlights,
Excuse me, could I ask a
Sure.
question before we move on? The chart that you showed us on out-of-school suspension risk ratio starts at the right-hand side at 2016-17, ends with 24-25. If we just take a look at the last 4 years, whether we look at black students or students who identify as 2 or more races, Hispanic, all those numbers have gone up. And yet we've invested a lot of money in behavior interventionists, training in conscious discipline, training in restorative practices. We've invested a lot of money over many years in PBIS training. I'm wondering, when are we going to see these numbers drop? Oh, and I forgot to mention the ICS program out of UW-Milwaukee. So when are we going to see a return on investment of those trainings and so on, so that we don't come back in another year and see these numbers basically at the same level or maybe higher? Maybe that's a rhetorical question. I don't want to put you on the spot. But another point I want to make is I see a great opportunity here to work with Mr. Miller's pillar number 3 on community engagement, whether it's Real Oshkosh or it's some other group, in terms of what can we do better as a system to help these students who are experiencing these out-of-school suspension rates or numbers at the rate they are, because this is very concerning to me. We want kids to be in school, and yet we're sending another message when we suspend them out of school. And I'm not saying we should overlook bad behavior, but getting at the root causes of those behaviors, perhaps by involving the students. What do you need in order to be successful here? And also involving the parents. How can we help your child be more successful? But I find these numbers really troubling, that over the last 4 years, other than the Asian student population, those have not gone down.
Yeah, I agree with you on a number of counts. This is a huge concern of mine as well. I also agree that working with Director Miller and his family engagement plan is one of the key pieces that we should be focusing on. A lot of the work that we've put in over the past year specifically has been doing what we can to try to eliminate bias from instances of out-of-school suspension. So I think I spoke at one of the last board meetings about some of the things that we've done around kind of streamlining our discipline codes, our definitions around certain categories of discipline. But Director Miller's also been going in and doing trainings for our staff on implicit bias and things that staff can do when implicit biases are recognized. And along with that, he and I continue to sit down on a regular basis and review data and look for instances where there'd be a high degree of subjectivity involved with an out-of-school suspension. And we're not seeing a lot of that.
Okay.
So I think focusing specifically on bias, it's something that we need to continue to address, but we need to approach it from other angles as well. So family engagement, I think, is a huge piece. Also continuing working with our schools to create more targeted interventions and supports for our students of color in particular, but really making sure that we are properly identifying and putting the interventions in place that are proven to have the impact that we need to have.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I put you on the spot.
No,
It's
no,
not
it's okay.
just you, it's the whole system we need to improve in this area, so I apologize.
So again, some of the highlights from our individual schools. One of the highlights from Carl Traeger Elementary, they implemented Traeger trucking this year. So as a part of that, they've implemented active calming centers that use physical and mental tasks to help calm and regulate students. And then they also have incorporated a mentorship program with Carl Traeger Middle School. So some of our Carl Traeger Middle School students on their recesses will come over to the elementary school and work with some of our students who are in active calming breaks through Traeger trucking, or work with them on reading, math games, that sort of thing. So that's been a nice change over at Carl Traeger Elementary. For Menominee Elementary, they're really proud of the morning meetings that they've been putting in place, and these are all school morning meetings that take place every other Wednesday in their building. So as a part of those morning meetings, they really focus on building their school family, so it's more or less a celebration of the great things that they're doing, but they also incorporate SEL skills into those morning meetings. A lot of it is really focused on conscious discipline as well. So along with that, they have also been doing community projects with buddy classrooms in their schools. So they have buddy classrooms that come together and work on community projects. So I know they've created projects for some of our retirement communities in town and doing things that will allow them to give back to our community. And then from a high school perspective, North has been doing a lot around building activities that into their homeroom periods that really help build that positive culture and climate. They've been implementing learning modules for our students who are re-entering, coming off of in-school or out-of-school suspensions. And then they've really focused on all school celebrations that are focused on inclusiveness. So they have their Multicultural Day celebration and then their Black History Month event as well. And then also Oak Lawn Elementary has been doing some great things as well. So I have Darcy Trebiatowski here from Oak Lawn to talk a little bit more about that.
Very good.
Hello, everyone.
Good to see you.
Hi.
So I am a behavior instructional support teacher, and this is my 19th year as an educator in Oshkosh Area School District. So first year at Oak Lawn, and when I came in, I joined their social emotional leadership team, and we were monitoring the data like Matt had mentioned through EduClimber. And we noticed there was an influx of children that were avoiding being in the classroom. A lot of struggle with self-regulation and big emotions. So our team took a look at the data and we decided we wanted to move forward and try to decrease the amount of time that kids were spending out of class, because we know how important it is to be in class and in learning. So we got together, we developed a 3-phase plan rollout with our staff to open an active calming center first. We educated our staff first. That was our first phase, that we decided everybody was going to commit to having a safe place in their room, because that's the anchor to our regulation rooms, is the safe place. So everyone committed. We got all of our teachers worked really hard at getting their safe places up, teaching that to the kids. That was our first phase. Then our second phase went into opening up our active calming center on both floors. So we have 2 floors at our school. So we opened up a first floor and a second floor active calming center. Ours looks similar to Carl Traeger, but a little different. So we opened it up. We had kids show and teach other kids how to do it. So there was our team that was trained to do it. So we trained the kids first, and then we had a plethora of kids that were volunteering to want to take ownership over that and teach the other kids. So that was phase 2. Then phase 3 is that once we had all that in place, that we would move into opening up our regulation rooms themselves. So we had our active calming center through, we had the kids learning, we had kids that were trained on it, we took videos, we had a slide presentation, and all of ours, like I said, our school family was really working together hard to make sure that we were ready for the opening. So we opened the self-regulation rooms, and it was wonderful. The kids were able to utilize the active calming as a self-regulation tool, as well as saying at the end, because step 9 in the active calming center was that, am I calm enough to be able to return to class? Or do I need the self-regulation room across from, we had it right across from the active calming center, step 9. So they just walked right into the room. And a majority of the kids will say, yep, I'm okay. I'm okay to go back. What we saw was a decrease in the amount of minutes that kids were spending out in the hallway, in the bathrooms even, but just a decrease in avoidance behaviors, and also an increase in more calm behaviors, helpful, understanding, more empathetic to others, so helping them through. So you would start hearing kids say, you can go do the active calming center and you'll feel a lot better. You can come back to class. So in turn, it was just a huge celebration for our school family. That was one of our biggest celebrations this year. And then can I share the one about Merrill? I know Merrill's no longer existent, but I wanted to share that after coaching and having the opportunity, I had a gift of being able to attend many conscious discipline trainings that, such as Matt mentioned. I love to learn, and I wanted to take it back to the classroom. So in 2022, I decided to leave coaching and try it out again. And I walked back into my first grade classroom at Merrill Elementary. And my focus that year was I was setting up that school family, and I was going to focus on building relationships. And there was no rewarding, no punishing, not like we were used to doing. So I had taught before, so when I came back this time, this was a total different lens, and I shifted my mindset on how I was going to look at that and what I can control. And I have to tell you, the one thing I did not expect, so a lot changed. I learned a lot that year. But what I didn't expect was the significant change that happened. So I had an increase in family involvement, which we've been speaking about today. So many of my families that didn't feel safe, I kept reaching out to, and we were able to increase family engagement through that. One of the other things is I had children that were using the safe place that often will say kids can't help each other regulate. They can, and it happened, and it was just a huge celebration. So again, I had a child that was nonverbal that started in my classroom, and by the end of the year, he was using, it's a structure strategy and tool called Time Machine. So it's a restorative strategy to use for kids to solve social problems. And this child that was nonverbal, I have him on video. He came up and he was able to solve a social problem with another child, even though he didn't have that language, because it gave him the structure and the language he needed to be able to do that. So overall, I just want to share, there's so many celebrations going on throughout our district, but that was the first year that I feel like relationships first, connection first.
That's
great.
Darcy, what you just shared is a beautiful, I think, response, and maybe an answer to a question that you didn't even hear asked, and that was earlier today in our listening session, with how these types of approaches are more effective than an out-of-school suspension that maybe punishes a behavior but doesn't give the opportunity for skill building. So can you speak a little more to the philosophy behind taking these opportunities to help build a skill instead of punitively reacting to a behavior without that opportunity being attached?
Sure. So often, we don't see the positive intent behind what the child is doing, and the behaviors are a call for communicating something. They need something. And so often in the past, so even I'm speaking from when I first started teaching to the second time I went back to the classroom, and that shift is that the first time it was more like, Matt didn't do his work, he's staying in for recess. That doesn't change his behavior. He is not going to do his work because recess was taken away. That doesn't change. It's a skill deficit. So I have to figure out what is causing Matt to not want to do the work, the bottom line. So digging deeper, like we talked about earlier today. So what happens is when I approach Matt with that positive intent and say to Matt, something happened, you're stuck. What happened? And I heard a lot of you say, go right to the kids and talk to them, and it's so important. So when we do that, we're building that skill. So I know, say Matt didn't understand addition. I know that I just need to help build that skill, and he's going to probably do his work. It's going to change the behavior. Now, me going up to him and saying, nope, you just don't go out for recess today because you didn't do your work, is not going to change that behavior. So what I saw from going back and teaching is that when you target and you really monitor and you observe and you look at kids and you really try to figure out what is causing that function of that behavior, and you're able to look at it from a skill deficit lens versus, they're just not wanting to. It's not about want usually. It's usually about they just don't have the skills to do it, and it works. I saw it work. I did not use any rewards. I did not use any punishments that entire year. My behaviors that were interrupting learning, I would say those cases where kids were taken and had to be removed or they left on their own from class due to the significance of it, where it went down from over 10 a day to probably 3 a day. And then at the end, there was minimal, maybe 2 or 3 a week. So it really does make a difference. Yeah. It's being supportive versus reactive. Yeah.
Mrs. Mulder.
I do have questions later
Okay.
on, but I do want to make sure that I say something to you, Darcy, specifically. Actually, it's Darcy and Matt together. I've known you for almost my entire length of being involved with Oshkosh Area School District, and unfortunately, the reason I really met both of you was during, you, Darcy, were an instructional support teacher for Peace Preschool in the 4K, when unfortunately a student lost her life in a biking versus car accident. And the support that you two provided the school back then was outstanding and so valuable. And I first got to know Darcy because we were the ones collecting all of these gifts after winning raffles for trying to support this girl's family after that tragedy. But I've known Darcy now through 3 of, I think, the last 4 schools that you've worked at, both from 4K to Emmeline Cook, and then I did not know you when you were at Merrill, but then I had the privilege of seeing you in doing that amazing work at Oaklawn. In your time at eCook as a behavioral support specialist, it was amazing the relationships that you built with the staff and with the students to make a difference in implementing this and making this a belief and mindset. And then seeing everything at Oaklawn, I saw I was there earlier this year, very early in the school year as one of the schools that I was supposed to visit. And I saw a lot of this. I was doing a tour with the principal, saw so many kids going in and out of the classroom. It was all done. It wasn't chaotic, but there were a lot of kids. But I saw you in action with the students, and I saw the other staff in action, and that training was because of you and what you have been able to build with these communities. And I think we can't underestimate the importance of having the people like you in these buildings to help support staff and obviously families through sometimes very difficult times. So thank you, Darcy. I'm very glad you're here again to shine
Thank
in
you
this.
for the kind words.
Okay, do we have any questions for Darcy, Matt?
Do you want to go into the discipline
Go
stuff?
on. Yeah, I'm going to go back to that, but.
Yeah, I think we're both going back to the discipline and the suspension rates. This isn't new information to us. The one that was a surprise to me, or at least a heartbreaking surprise, was the risk ratio, particularly for black girls. That seems like a crisis to me, and I hope there's some way that we can hold accountable that changes very rapidly. I'm curious, though, I understand there's a lot of long-term work that needs to be done. Is there any space where admin, whether it's at the school level or the district level, can commit to reviewing these suspensions very rapidly, like before a kid is removed, or at least not removed more than 1 day for an out-of-school suspension? Because, I think to points that Darcy made, the goal is, and the behavior changes don't happen if they're just plucked out of there. What can admin do now to commit to reviewing these to make sure that these are, should be out-of-school suspensions or not? And what can we do for this coming school year to start really seeing a change in these numbers?
Yeah, I think for most of our schools, our school administrators are reviewing the suspensions or are the ones that are handing out the suspensions. In some instances where we have schools where we have deans of students, it could potentially be them in some instances, but I would imagine even in those cases, our administrators are clued in. So that's something we can make sure that we continue to build understanding around with all of our administrators in terms of, making sure they're aware on the front end, but then also having more of a standardized expectation around what is and what isn't the appropriate suspension.
Is there something that can be done at the district level to review all these before these kids are out of the school for a long period of time? Like, can you guys be reviewing each and every one of these? I know that that's not how it should work when our system is working as it should, but I feel like we're at a crisis level here.
There are mechanisms that would alert us for example, if a student were to be suspended for a long period of time. So what we wouldn't know is if it's a 1 day or 2 day suspension. I think we would have to we would be monitoring that daily. But if there's a suspension that, for example, is 3 days or 4 days, we can set notifications in Infinite Campus when those suspensions are issued to alert us and then potentially review those. That is a possibility, but that's something we can get back to you on if we want to use that as an approach to maybe do some quality checks to make sure that the suspensions are.
Yeah, because I share Dr. Herzog's frustration of there's been so many things that have been done and it's going the wrong way. And if we can give that same, our behaviors can't be that different for white students or students of color. And if that's the premise that we're working on, that they are that different, that this is acceptable, then I see we have a different problem. But this is, yeah, I've got nothing new to say on this. It's incredibly frustrating, and the fact that it keeps getting worse is heartbreaking for these kids.
And I will reiterate, I'd like to see how many students this is, because there may be some students that talk about crisis mode may really be in crisis mode if it's a repeated offense, and those are the ones that we need to get to, and the family, and I'm assuming that you are, but I think I'd like to see the number of students that this entails, not the number of times.
Yeah, I can share that with you, no problem.
Thank you.
I think I remember when the Real Oshkosh group first gave their report, and somebody gave a presentation then at the district level, and at the time I think they had shown that the DPI was suggesting risk ratios should be the number of events over the number of students. And there's different ways of presenting things. If truly what you have presented today is number of students within a classification versus the total number of students in that classification, then those risk ratios actually make me feel so much worse about what is being presented, that I agree with Molly and Dr. Herzog that this is something that we really need to do something about. To Molly's point, and I think Mr. Kamen, you had mentioned something about that you guys are evaluating some of the suspensions to determine, is this truly something that anybody could objectively look at what happened here and say that student deserved it? And if, I hear that there are biases in how we have suspensions, and I think the data that you are talking about, that you guys are looking at, and I don't know if you're formally analyzing it, could alleviate some concerns about suspensions. If there was like a formalized study that said, hey, we sampled a collection of these suspensions, we removed any indication of race in it, we have made a determination that of all of these, this is the number that is just clear cut, this is deserving, and then go back in and apply the race into it, or whatever factor you want to apply into it. That is the type of analysis that could alleviate some concern about, is there inherent biases as to how we are allocating this? And I would be interested in seeing that.
Excuse me.
And then finally, I got to come back to the equity plan that we saw last April. If I think about that plan, again, I think we had like 30-some points of things that we were going to do. We accomplished all of those, but I think one of them, and we were about to get that last one kind of thing. But a month ago, we saw the disparities in the academic achievement, and now we're seeing the disparities here in out-of-school suspensions getting worse. And that's my struggle with when we are measuring things and we are saying we're succeeding because we've done all of this work, but it's not the fact that you've done all of it that matters, it's what are the outcomes that matter. And to me, it's the academic achievement, and the academic achievement is clearly impacted by disparities in the number of kids that we have out of school. So I agree with Dr. Herzog that how much more can we give you everything that we ask? I think we say yes to because we want to see improvements. And yet, this is what happens. And, you know, so then at some point I look to my colleagues on the board and say, you know, I know everybody here has the best of intent. We want to make things happen, but we're not the ones that are the experts in this. We're just the ones evaluating it. But we need you guys to come up with something that actually changes the needle on these things. So then I would look to what I heard Dr. Ford talk about in the campaign was in our equity plan, I think last April, we talked about out-of-school suspensions, that we were going to evaluate that data monthly. I feel like this is important enough for this community to get right where I would like to see a dashboard on our out-of-school suspensions, and I'd like to see it updated on a monthly basis so that we know next year as we're going through that these things that you are telling us that we're going to accomplish are actually doing something. Because it just gets frustrating waiting to the end of the year to see this stuff and go, oh my gosh, it didn't work, you know? So to know right away that we're making a difference right up front is what I would hope we could shoot for. Because this is incredibly frustrating, seeing these suspensions, seeing the academic achievement disparities, seeing all this stuff. We know people have been frustrated about this for a long time. And we got to give them something to be happy about here soon. So, and I'm not directing it. You guys are just the ones that happen to be given this report.
One quick point on that is I do very much appreciate that, Matt, that you are including this difficult data in your reports and are making the connections. That's why Real Oshkosh came up with a report a couple of years ago, because this wasn't being shared. At least we've gotten to the point where it's starting to be out there. And I appreciate that you take it on the chin and include it in your reports.
Yeah, are we seeing trends in middle versus high school or anything school by school? I'm just curious, and I guess this dovetails into everything that was talked about, the extent to which we can triage and isolate where our concerns are so that we can use limited resources we do have to try to have maximum impact.
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the things that we've done this year is we've done data walks with individual schools around their discipline data, so they can pull their own risk ratios and really take a cross-section of their population and see where they have trends that have developed. So that's something we're going to continue to do, because I think that's more effective when done at the school level.
Yeah.
And obviously our schools across the district have different populations of students, so being able to look at their data and take ownership of their data and come up with additional solutions or ways to address it as a building is something we want to continue.
No, that sounds good. I mean, I think I'm hearing what everybody's saying here, and I'm in agreement that we want this data that you're presenting. We want it to be actionable, and that means presenting it in a format that we can utilize it, and making sure that you all have it in a format where you can do something useful with it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Moving on to the consent agenda. You have in front of you the rules for the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Hessen, Ford.
Yes.
Ford.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Hess.
Aye.
Smithley.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Thank you. Next, we have request for future agenda items, and I think we're changing the title of that to request for future items for committee review.
Or, yeah, for review, or, yeah.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything? Okay. Announcements. I want to say welcome to Kelly Skifstead, our new Director of Special Education. Thank you for being here tonight. We welcome you, we wish you the best, and we're anxious to get to know you more. Appreciate it.
I'm grateful to be here.
Okay. And now-
Excuse me, I would
Yes.
also like to announce that we have our 2 high school student reps who will be joining us.
Oh, marvelous.
The 2 high school student council presidents decided to come and see what this was about tonight, so.
Would you like to stand up and introduce yourselves, please?
I'm Maddie Probst, and I'm going to be a senior at Oshkosh West this year. And I'm just super excited for this position and like all the ways that it is going to help our school and for you guys.
It's great.
Hi, I'm Campbell Geis. I am the Oshkosh North Student Council President, and being at this meeting makes me very inspired for next year, and makes me look forward to what's going to be happening this next upcoming year.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, welcome, and we look forward to your input at the future meetings. Thank you very much. We will now be adjourning to executive session to consider disciplinary data of a specific person, and also considering employment, promotion, compensation, performance evaluation of any public employee with which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Is there a motion?
So moved, Barb.
Second. Hess.
Herzog.
Aye.
Hess.
Aye.
Sneltney.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned to executive session.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.